Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, board. And John, would you open us in prayer?
Sure. Thank you, Jim. We bow our heads, please. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord, where we can take and do your business here at Granville, or at Georgetown, I am sorry. And just thank you for your blessing. We thank you for the wonderful people that work here and how they dedicate their lives to our township. We thank you for our people that are first responders and how they risk their lives for us. And just these good people that every day they do the best they can. Please be with our nation, Lord. Be with our leaders. And thank you for this opportunity. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No.
Jesus, you're good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, let the record reflect that tonight. And we'll go to item 5 then, the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Support.
And supported. Anyone have any comments, wish to add anything to the agenda this evening? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. Item 6, communication letters and report received for information. Item 7, public comment period. First public comment period. Hi, Mr. Bosch. How are you? And this gentleman back here, welcome. If either one of you would like to speak to any agenda items tonight, you're welcome at this time. Otherwise, we'll have another public comment period toward the end. All right. Seeing none at this time, then we'll close that. I would say, what has it been? I said exactly a year tonight. This is the fewest number of people that I've ever seen at a meeting. You recall, Michael, you've been around a few years.
Oh yeah, we've had nobody show up.
Really?
Wow.
I don't recall that. Maybe I missed that one. Anyway, welcome. Item 8, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, I heard a move in
I'll
support.
support.
All right. Okay. Any discussion? Anyone wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda?
I'd like to bring up a little bit more about the holiday.
Okay. Item 8, Roman numeral 4, which will now become, we'll make it item, we call it 10A. Holiday lights. All right. Any other items any board member wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, with that removal, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Consent agenda is passed. Item 9 now. This is an ordinance for amendments to various chapters of our ordinance made and put forward by the Planning Commission. There are quite a few of them, as you noticed when you read through there. Is there a motion to place that before the board for approval?
So moved.
Support. Okay, moved and supported. Discussion is now open. I do this sometimes, but I tend to look to somebody who's on the Planning Commission and say, Gary, we've read the staff report, we've seen the various notes and the votes. Just wonder if there's anything you'd like to add to the efforts of the Commission in bringing this before us.
Not really. There's a lot of discussion on some of the changes that we made. Probably the biggest one was the change of buildings in the backyard on lakes and pools and stuff, and that's been a kind of discussion on how to word that. I think a lot of it boiled down to a lot of the HOAs have a lot of that stuff already in their bylaws, so we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it as far as what we have control over, what the HOA has control over. So that was probably our largest discussion of all the things that we did.
Is it fair to say that the Commission was taking up maybe a list of items that have been accumulating that either had come before the Commission, items of dispute or question marks?
Yeah. Like one of the things was because we approved that new hotel by McDonald's. We've never had a hotel in Georgetown Township. So we used a lot of the zoning that was for apartments, which really isn't fair because you need a lot more parking for apartments than you do for a hotel. You know, your stays are there. Plus, to get the PUD, the hotel people are staying overnight, whereas if you have a Dunkin' Donuts that are closed at 8 o'clock, they have near as much traffic, so you use some of their parking spots. So the parking area is shared in the PUD, and because we didn't have that, you'll see a change there with parking for a hotel, which is different than an apartment complex. Trying to figure out what's the best way to do that. So, and we went by, I think we looked at Granville's and Wyoming's and how they did their zoning for a hotel. So that was new for us. I don't think we've ever approved a hotel in Georgetown. So that was another discussion we had. I think we went over like 2 or 3 meetings trying to make, but we're trying to update the zoning. There's certain things that just the language needed to be cleaned up or tightened up a little bit.
Appreciated your efforts being proactive, and I mean that's part of what the Planning Commission does, not just react to the petitions that come before it, but to try to clean up ordinances or tighten them up.
Victor Vaughn is a huge asset, I believe. He's very articulate. He's very serious. He takes things very serious. Dan will probably know that too. But I've had a lot of conversations with him before and after meetings. He's very, very open to discussions. And I actually have had a lot of good feedback from people that have come into the township, businesses that want to see if they can do something to their building or build a building on a piece of property. And Victor goes a long ways to try to walk them through the process or see if they actually need to come to the Planning Commission, because there are things that he can approve as a zoning administrator. And so I've had a lot of good comments from people outside the community saying, hey, this is a good guy. They really like working with him. He really does seem to enjoy his job, and I think he's worth complimenting on the things he does. So,
nice
and I've talked to Dan and Manette about that too, and I've talked to him too, and I appreciate him.
Nice to hear that. Appreciate the feedback. I noticed unanimous votes on everything except something with the kennels, right? That was like a 4-3.
Yeah, the kennels was an interesting thing because of the zoning. If I remember right, currently the zoning is an industrial property, and the discussion was on the size of the property, if I remember right, because I think the current zoning was like an acre or less, and so we're trying to increase that so there's more room, and we're also trying to be careful of the neighborhoods of where you put up dogs and kennels and whether or not they can keep them overnight. I think, anytime you start dealing with animals, it seems like it's a interesting conversation. So
You get the pet lovers, and then you get the more logistical lovers, right?
Yeah.
Well, I like to eat them, animals. So that's where I'm at.
Is it fair to say, I mean, on the whole, as I read them, it seemed more like we're expanding, you might say, more freedom and a little less restrictive. Is that on certain things?
I think certain things I do notice from my in the last few years, just from my business stand, it seems like we're doing a lot more PUDs, which seems to give a little more leniency for both the township and for property owners. Whereas before it was pretty restrictive exactly. This zoning did this and this zoning did that. It was a PUD, which is like we did with the hotel. We PUD the property. Well, that kind of gives them a little leniency what they can do on certain pieces and not, without having to go through a whole lot of hoops. So, and I think that works good on certain properties that don't have like that area there. There's apartments behind it. There's a big green area between there. So you're not really like bringing anything with a lot of noise that's going to be disrupting anybody because there's a lot of area there. So I think there's an advantage to that. I think you got to be a little careful where you go with some of it, but it's a learning curve for me only because I've not been on that side of the zoning. Just been for 1 year, but it's been a good learning experience. It's a good board. Everybody has good questions. I enjoy everybody on that board. Good feedback.
Good, thanks for that background. Comments?
From a less restrictive standpoint, I had a couple questions. I was able to kind of look through it. The section 2.29 relates to the dwelling description. So from how I read it, if you had a home that was a couple stories or 2 stories, you had a base that was a walkout, you wanted to put a kitchen in, you have a bedroom down there, you'd not be able to in this edit? Did I read that right? I could be wrong.
I think the discussion centered around whether or not you could use that area for a mother-in-law suite, you might say. That was the discussion was around. Apparently, there's been a home that's been built in Georgetown in NDR, and they put a mother-in-law suite and they connected to the house, and it's a place for the guy's mom to live. And that was before I was on the board, and all of a sudden this got caught up in that, and they're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. So I don't think it's not going to outlaw being able to put that down there. It's just what's the use.
Okay.
That seems to be the problem. What's it going to be used for? Are you going to rent it out, Airbnb?
You'll be able to explain that when you make it. Or what's the language? Is it going to make it harder for a person? We see a lot of transplants come over from other areas, east side, all over the place, and we've got people who are moving into Georgetown, and they have in-laws who come in for the weekend,
right?
Not dwelling, not staying there,
right?
And want to make it more accommodating for out-of-towners to stay for the weekend. And if we're making it harder for our constituents to make those accommodations, I'd hate to see that language knowing where we're going.
So you'll notice, though, the language it has its own separate entrance.
Right. Which is, would it be for those in, like, a walkout basement? Because we have a lot of walkout basements.
Right. Right.
Yep, I specifically asked Victor, and he said it's like a slider yes entrance. I said even if there's attached to the house and there's no separate front door, still considered an entrance. So, and I guess my concern is, so if they're, if they turn in their plans to PCI for approval and they'll say, oh, you show a kitchen downstairs. Can't. It's not a duplex. It's LDR. So that's the problem with this. I know it is a reaction because they snuck one past on Baldwin there, but
right.
I think this sets up more trouble. And like I said at the Planning Commission meeting, if I'm going to put 5 stoves in my house, I'll put 5 stoves in my house. If I want to put one in my bedroom and have fresh cookies in the middle of the night, I can do it. So if I want to have another kitchen because my dad and my mom are going to move in with me, that's my choice. It's my house.
Right.
As long as it's not a separate building.
Right.
Well, and I think very often people put like a wet bar in their basement or something like that, and I wondered where the line draws between a wet bar that has a sink and a refrigerator and maybe a range and a kitchen. We live in a house with a walkout basement, and we don't currently have anything like that in our basement, but it does come to mind if we would want to one day.
I like the idea that they're trying to clarify and bring some consistency to the language. I just wouldn't want us to write us into a corner for a good segment of our constituents.
Right.
Yeah, I think that should have been, discussed more. I did look at the minutes to see how much discussion there was on each one of these. Some of them it showed no discussion, and some of them, like parking spots, and the others showed a lot of discussion.
Right.
And that's why I wish we had video, because then I could watch it and see, was there discussion, but it just didn't get recorded in the minutes?
Well, I don't know. Our minutes are pretty thorough. I will give you that when it comes to that. So it's possible that we went through this and I think part of it was because of the fact that they looked at what had happened. So they were trying to correct that. Or maybe that overcorrected. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's what I thought. It was kind of a reactionary, like, oh man, they snuck it past us. We got to stop that.
I'm not opposed to sending it back if we need to do the language. I mean, that's not. I don't think anybody's trying to do anything that wouldn't be acceptable. Like you say, putting a kitchen in your basement. I think it's just basically how to get the language so that you don't set it up as a rental unit or a full-time duplex, you might say, and keep it as a single family.
I guess,
That's the,
what would be the risk in, okay, so now I'm asking a secondary question about turning it into a mother-in-law suite and allowing for constituents to have that option instead of going to retirement communities, and they can and want to take mom in or dad in.
Right.
Does this not allow for that to happen?
The key distinction there is that at the end there where it's talking about the one in question is a completely separate entrance, completely separate garage, and barely any connection between the two properties. So if you see in this one, like the lake house is not considered that. So we're already in our ordinance enforcing it in that manner where we don't allow the second. And so they're trying to clarify to say like a lake house is okay, it's excluded from that. At the same time, not saying a duplex is okay in a residential zone.
Okay, so for the instance of, say, you've got a slider in the basement, you've got a bedroom, and you want to put in, you know, a wet bar, and you also want to bring in mom because she's getting elderly. Would you be able to do that?
You can bring in mom anyway because mom's a member of the family, so that's fine in that situation.
So this example, so we had a house.
This is the hard part is drawing the line of where it's okay and where it's not, and there's going to be some interpretation there of whether it's a duplex, which is like two properties right together, or is it kind of someone kind of trying to put a duplex in a residential area. So, but that's where it's a single family, I shouldn't say resident, but single family area. That's what they're trying to continue and clarify to allow kitchens in certain buildings, because it's been a problem on lake houses when they want a full kitchen downstairs, and we've stopped them, and now we're clarifying it so they can do so. What I'm suggesting is it's not something new to stop, it's something we're already attempting to stop. And this is trying to say, okay, in these situations it's okay.
So this is a step in a better direction than where we've been.
I'm not sure the language is perfect because obviously you're confused. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying what the attempt is to address a situation we're already dealing with.
Yep.
That when things were written, they weren't contemplating maybe a 6,000 square foot house, with multiple living spaces. There was things not contemplated that's why they're suggesting it's a significant issue on lake houses where they're having a full use of your lower level as part of the same dwelling unit, as opposed to the one that they're talking about is a separate. You have a separate garage on that one. The driveway splits into two different garages and hits the two different level. It's hard to determine where that's not a duplex. They're not using it that way, so it's not a problem. But if they did in the future, it would be a problem. So.
Yeah, I think it could be determined by saying a breezeway is not connecting two homes with a breezeway. That's a duplex. I mean, it's obviously two separate homes.
Right.
But if it shares the same roof line, has the appearance of a single home, doesn't have two different addresses, I mean, there's a number of things that could take care of that without.
I mean, it's a little harder than you think, but yeah, what's combined, because people will push the line to do in the rental.
Oh, yeah.
There's a strong push to do rental in residential area right now, and that's what they're trying to address. So, and that's the complaints that we can get from neighbors who live by different situations. But yeah.
And the lake house would be taken care of with the homeowners association of the lake.
If they have it, yeah. And the lake they can, but yeah, other places it can still be an issue. So.
Give me a standard complaint, Dan, that you see come in.
Well, the Airbnb ones are the biggest complaints we get to address this. So someone has an Airbnb rental and it turns into a party every weekend. And that's the biggest complaint. But this is no way addressing it if two units in the same house. It's not addressing that. But as far as rental, I thought you were talking about. But.
I think Airbnbs are typically the whole house. It's not a lower level. It's the whole house.
It's technically my own house would fall into this, where I live. It's behind my house. I have a separate entrance. I have a garage into my garage, a kitchen, bedroom, dining room, family room, and a laundry downstairs.
But if you see that last an exception is a
Right.
dwelling unit, that excludes your house, right?
I get it.
I'm sorry, with exception, read that, say it again. An exception is a dwelling unit that has a cooking facility in a basement or lower level, which is not considered to be a total independent living area. That's the exception that they're adding. That's the part that they're trying to clarify, to exclude the lake houses, to exclude those properties. But
Right.
it doesn't mean it's perfect language here.
Yeah.
Could be some work could be done.
So for years, we had a family, 2 different families live in our basement, refugees. They had their own sliding door to get in and out. They had a kitchen, makeshift bedrooms, legal windows. Okay. Would that be
It would.
permissible or not?
More than 4 people in each group? More than 4 unrelated?
Certainly in the one case.
That's not in this particular situation at all, but it's in violation in another area.
Okay. Past tense.
I know, right?
No more than 4 unrelated parties can live in the same dwelling.
So from a logistics standpoint, can we approve these in bulk, but ask the planning commission to continue to look at the language on that one part in particular? Or do we need to revise our motion to approve all of the other parts, and send the one that we're concerned about back to the planning commission for reconsideration?
I think you can send them, if you have a question, you can look for clarity there. I'm not sure on the advertising, which I'm only thinking to keep them together.
Yeah.
Because we advertise these afterwards. I don't know if we've done ads on some of these yet. Number one. So I think it's,
We are, according to Victor, we're allowed to adjust a little bit of the language
you can clarify
without
language.
having to go back to advertising.
Right. You can clarify the language.
Right.
And make it less restrictive. That's fine.
Right. We made a couple of changes last time after we approved it because of that same thing, and then we asked them about it because now he's already checked into that and said that we were allowed to clarify language without changing too much of the intent. So if that's something,
This is an attempt to clarify language, and so I think it needs to be done better. Yeah.
if you've ever been to our meetings, it's a pretty long meeting. I mean,
Right.
I think we had 3 meetings. In fact, one we quit early because it was got too late. But it's been a unique part of it. This is probably the most time we spent in planning commission trying to deal with ordinances, trying to get it cleaned up. So, and I appreciate the comments. I'm not offended by them because I think you make valid points on getting it right.
It's fine if you want to pass the others, and this one can be done. It'll just be a different advertisement, which is fine. If they end up tweaking it, it can come back. So you won't defeat it. Just refer this one back.
Okay.
So do we need to revise our motion then to remove that one?
Maybe we should continue the discussion because there might be others
Yeah.
that people want to address besides that one. But are there others of the changes anybody wishes to address? Yeah, I had one, section 3.4, accessory buildings and uses. A number of questions on it, and we had brought it up in ZBA. A couple of these parts. One, I was hoping that Planning Commission would have more discussion about the size of an accessory building. And they did discuss it, and they decided that anything roof supported by columns would be the definition of the footprint. And then the gazebo part is good, that can be added, so parts of that work. And then also a pool house or a lake house could be combined all together, all three, which is great. But what I wanted to see more clarity on was the square footage of an accessory building. Could be up to 200 square foot. And then also our current ordinance says it can have up to a 3-foot eave. So you could do a 10 by 20 and then 3-foot eave all the way around, makes it a 16 by 26. And what I was trying to illustrate is, so that is a total square footage footprint if you drop lines down on each corner. So my question was, what difference does it make where those posts sit on there? It's still part of the overhang. And then once you throw the gazebo part in, that adds even more to it. So what about the columns on the gazebo? Does that include in the footprint of that? Would that be part of the 200 square foot? So I think it's kind of heading down the road in the right direction, because the popular thing now is you do an accessory building and then a gazebo off of it, which is a covered sitting area or an outdoor grill, kitchenette type thing. So I think we're going to see this come up more and more and more. So that's why I want to make sure with any of this stuff, if we go tweaking ordinances, amending them, let's make sure they're good and solid and vetted, so we don't just in 2 years come back and go, well, we were wrong on that, and now we got to revise that again, revise it again. I would just like more clarity, and also more clarity. And one of the things I had was during the planning commission, I had stated how it said the additional 200 square feet of pool house structure may be attached to an existing structure. And my concern was it could be misinterpreted as existing structure. Well, if you don't have an accessory building, the existing structure would be the home. So they're going to put a pool house on the home, not pull a permit because it's under 200 square foot, get started on the project and find out that they're in violation. So that language was cleared up a little bit to say it was, I believe it was an existing accessory building. But that was part of when I go through this is, okay, I've got experience on ZBA for 5 years. The average resident is reading this and having no idea. And if I read it and I'm like, boy, that's not exactly clear, I can guarantee our average resident's going to read it and go, well, I think this is what it means. And it's under 200 square foot, so let's attach it to the back of the house. And we're good. Until they find out they're not, and then, money's wasted, time's wasted, and there's trouble. So I like to make it as crystal clear as possible, and for as much as it can be possible, just so you don't have those questions where it's gray areas. Because even that with the whole overhang part, that was even a gray area years ago when I did my pool house with my overhang, and I asked them, I said, well, what's the clarity on this? And I talked to Ted at the time, and Manette, and I talked to what's his name, Chuck Dyke, over at PCI, just to get clarity to make sure before I start this thing, I want to make sure it's right. And it was like, no, you should be fine. You should be fine. But I just like it to be as clear as possible. And then another part of that too, I had questioned what the 40-acre lake, what's the significance of 40 acres when, if you have a pool, in order to have a pool house, the pool has to be at least 500 square feet. So there's a set number, so 500 square feet, and your lot has to have room for it and still meet the required setbacks. And then I could translate that to a lake and say, well, why 40 lakes? What if it's a 20-acre lake and there's 20 houses on it? If you divide that lake up by the 20 houses, well, that's more than 500 square foot per house. Well, then they should be able to have a lake house, in exchange for that pool house. So that was one I was just like 40 acres. I'm not sure where the number came from. But and that's another one too that most homeowners association rules will supersede that anyway. But I just thought 40 acres. It's a pretty big lake. I know the ones they're doing off Fillmore are only going to be around 20 acres each. So how many lakes do we have that are 40 lakes or larger in Georgetown? So I just look at that one and say I would lean more towards based on how big the lake is, how many homes are on it, divide that up and see what that square footage is.
Well, I think the 40-acre lake, from the way I understand, the way that number was picked was they figured that was the smallest lake you'd have boats on. So if you have a lake less than 40 acres, you probably wouldn't have it as an all-sports lake. The lake I live on is 40 acres. That's probably about minimum you want a boat on. We have boats on our lake, but I think that's where that 40-acre came from. There was a lot of discussion on this. This was probably one of our largest discussions. The 40-acre lake, the pool accessory building, because that's always a big one, and The gazebo thing, I think there was even discussion of just throwing it out and going, hey, you're going to build one building and that's it. But I think it came back to Todd Stidey when he put his pool by his house. Seemed like there was a ZBA issue there too that we dealt with.
It was the house. He had an outbuilding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some height.
So that's where this all kind of came from, was that. This is my first go around with zoning changes, and I kind of sat there and went, well, like where I live, the HOA kind of limits what you can do in your backyard. Most lakes have that. And I think part of it was the fact that HOA probably would supersede this anyway, so we're just trying to make an attempt at what's the best way to do this. And I can't really tell you, my assumption is that this came up because of Todd's place, that this even came out, because I'm not sure we even had this in the zoning. We're dealing with buildings on lakes and pools and stuff, so I know they got some revised 8-10-09, but some of this other stuff is kind of new, so.
And I like the idea of, giving that ability to people who live on lakes, and like the non-sports lakes, say a 10 or 20 acre lake, you'll still have the same kind of things a 500 square foot pool would have, which is rafts, floaties.
Right.
But then you'll also have kayaks, paddle boards. So I could see that even not necessarily to store a full motorboat with trailer, but all the toys and floaties and I know pool house, the idea is, you can put your pool pump in there, your filter, your heater to kind of disguise that stuff and keep it out of, so it's not such an eyesore. But I just look at those non-sports lakes, and they've got a lot of toys too, floating rafts and paddle boats. So I would just like to see that maybe discussed. Is it 1,000 square foot per parcel, totaled up and then divided? I don't know. That would just seem like that can use a little bit of tweaking. And then the other part was the height of an accessory building. And I know that came up in ZBA as well, and the discussion at the time was, I said this might be something that should go to Planning Commission to discuss it because it comes in a lot. It's different now than it was in the 70s when your typical Georgetown house was a ranch on a flat lot with little 12-inch by 32-inch windows in the basement. That was it. Where now we have everybody wants a walkout or a day lot. So now your backyard drops down 5 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot. And the spirit of the ordinance is fantastic because the idea was you don't want a 70s ranch with a 412 pitch roof and then behind it is some huge outbuilding towering over where you see it from the street. So I believe that was the spirit of the ordinance, is you don't want something that's going to stick out. You want that aesthetic from the road. And I think that's why I had proposed sending it to Planning Commission was if your backyard drops 10 feet, well, you're not even going to see that accessory building back there. So we would give them a little more leeway, because I believe I had one person who wanted, I forget what it was, like 12-foot ceiling, so he cut lumber and wanted to stack it vertically, and he wanted that extra height. So it was one of those, is that there was room for that one, something to look at. And that's where I was hoping they would kind of discuss more about the aspect of lots are different than they used to be when the ordinance was created. Maybe it's something based on if you have elevation change of 5 foot, or that gets tacked onto whatever your elevation change is on where you set your accessory building. That amount gets tacked on to whatever the height variance is, the mean height. I just wanted to see, I guess, more discussion on that part.
I think the 16-foot, going from a 14-foot to a 16-foot mean height gives you a lot more than what you think. That's halfway up the roof. When you look at pitches, definitely not a 412. You're probably looking at more of an 812. You still be able to get your 16 foot. It's not to the peak. It's halfway
Right.
up the roof.
Yeah, it's in between the peak
Height.
and the
So
top of the,
that extra 2 feet does give you an ability to put a steeper roof on to match some of the steeper roofs on the houses now. So I do think the 16-foot helps a lot. Yeah, it's a catch-22. You put up a big tall building and then the neighbors got to look at it. So that's always the catch-22, you know. I mean, the guys that put my lots where I live on Georgetown Shores West was platted in '94 when they put them lots on. They have the ability to put a 2-stall garage in their backyard in the HOA. Now, which neighbor would love you that lives on a lake and have a 24 by 24 garage in your backyard? Because you're able to do that. But don't think any of my neighbors would do that. But you just kind of crazy. But who would want to look at that? It's the same thing with a very tall garage. You're trying to look out. You're trying to make it so when you look at it from the front, it kind of matches these homes now with steeper roofs. But yet, you're trying to protect your neighbors and you too. So, especially with all the green areas we have nowadays, we want to put green areas and pack these lots. You have this open area. Now you got a garage in the back corner. So I think that was the intent. We raised it up a couple of feet to get to start the steeper roofs, but that was the reasoning behind that.
The comments, reaction, anything?
The only questions I had was the 40 acres, as far as kind of the same as along with the line with what you were saying, Michael, as far as just storing stuff. Because I know a few people that live on, they like to store their kayaks, right? So that's instantly what I go to. And then the questions that everybody else brought up on 2.29. I'm a big property rights guy, so that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit on that one.
Just so you know, I'm one voice.
Oh, I know.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you on these points, but I'm going to tell you right now, we had especially on P, that discussion went for over an hour. It was almost ad nauseum. It's like, okay, guys, we got to, but the same thing went around with a 40 acre in that pool. Yeah, and I think Victor brought some of this, so I'm not sure how those numbers came about. I know the 40 acres was kind of based on a all sports lake, and yeah, I mean you can send anything back you want to send. I'm more than happy to explain what you guys want to do. You just gotta tell me what you want to do.
I think I heard general consensus on all but 2.29, and then just maybe on 3.4, a more narrow inquiry, and whether or not there's a movement among the board to say, yeah, that 40 acres is something that ought to be revisited, as if we're kind of doing, in a sense, doing their job for them, or second guessing them, you might say, because they sound like they've clearly talked through it. It's not like it's this point. I mean, would that be saying to them, well, if you come back with 40 again, we just aren't going to approve it? I think that's the sentiment here, is the feeling.
I mean, I think it's not that bad. I mean, I just counted. There's 14 different kind of aspects of this, and two that we have a question about. That's
Right.
Well, you guys did a pretty good job then.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Like I said,
And even the one, I feel like the one that we don't agree with, we agree that the language is improving and that the spirit of the effort is to clarify the language.
Right.
We just don't know that we're there yet.
Well, I think 2.29 is a difficult one because the only reason the thing's going to get popped is if a neighbor complains. All right. So if you have mother-in-law living with you or second cousin living in your basement because they're going to Grand Valley, as long as everything's going fine, it'll be fine. The first party you have and they're calling Chris over going, hey, they've been drinking out in the backyard and it's pretty rowdy. Who are these people? Well, I've been renting my basement out. That's when it's going to go south on you. And that's where to come back to the zoning, say, hey, this isn't allowed. So I think that's the intent here, but sometimes the intent isn't always the best the rule. You know what I mean? Trying to figure out what's the best way to word it. Because nobody wants to offend anybody that wants their mom and dad to live in the basement, live with them. So, I agree with it. And I agree with the property rights thing. It's just how do you word it so you're not offending people that are trying to use their homes the right way. Because there are parts of the country that are pushing for mother and father-in-law homes in the backyard even, not even just basements, the tiny house thing. So, I don't know.
Well, before we move in that direction possibly, is there any other comments or even from Dan or Rod as those who've been observing the process? Do you have any further comments? No? Okay. Well, is there a motion to advance and approve of at least all but the first two, the 3.4 and the 2.29?
Well, I had questions too about 27.4, reconstruction of damaged non-conforming building and structures. And I guess my concerns were, and this might be temporary, and who knows how long it'll go on, but it was the restoration shall take place within 6 months of the time of such damage and be completed within 1 year from such damage. So I think on paper it sounds fantastic, but in reality with insurance and then determining the cause of the fire, and then insurance is going to keep going back and forth. And then once that actually happens, I'm not even sure what the average time is. I'm guessing it takes quite a while. They don't just cut you a check the next day and, oh, well, here's a blank check. Go ahead and rebuild. So you're going to eat up a lot of time there. And then that extension of 6 months, I'd like to see it, the possibility of multiple extensions at the discretion of the zoning administrator. Just because right now trying to find a subcontractor, you might not even get somebody in for a year.
Right.
So that might be temporary, and who knows how long that'll go on, but it just makes it sound like, you better have it wrapped up in a year and a half, or
I think, if I remember right though, Michael, that in this, the wording provides the property owner submit a certification from the insurance company attesting the delay. If I remember right, that discussion was to grant even more extension if we need, as long as the insurance company was going to be a certificate of delay. Now, that sentence probably should be a little more clarifying. But I remember asking, I remember the same thing, because I said the same thing. I was like, wow, I've worked on a few insurance jobs. It can take a long time, longer than 6 months to get it cleaned up and get all the permissions and everything. And if I remember, we talked about that and said, well, that's why we have that. Provide property owner with submit a certification from the insurance company attesting to the delay. And I think the intent was that the delay could go beyond 6 months as long as there was proof from the insurance company was basically their fault. They just can't get people, or they can't get the investigation, whatever it takes. So that too, maybe that should be a little more stronger. But I do remember that discussion.
Right, which, I don't think
language, that's not the change.
It's already been in there. It's not being added, yeah.
Yeah, that's existing language.
Right, existing language.
Right.
also perfect time to change it since we're making other changes.
Well, I can bring that to the board myself. That would, if we approve it. I'm writing notes. I can write, hey guys, can we address this language with for future? Because the zoning ordinances should be continuing to be updated. So.
Because I don't think anybody's really going to try to string it out. I would think they'd want to get in as soon as they could.
No, the problem is nearly abandonment. That's when it kicks in. It's never been an issue if people are working on it, of the timing. The problem is when they're not working on it and the neighbors are going, we've lived with this eyesore for a year now, what are you doing about it? That's the problem.
and it's just nothing happening, and they're not responding, and they're not answering your calls. You're not even sure who clearly owns the property at this point because, there was a mortgage on it. The insurance was issued there. There might not have been enough there. So that's the problem.
Yep.
Nothing's taking place. Not when someone's trying to get it done. That's not the problem.
I'm more comfortable with the township assessing sort of the good faith of the one involved and granting the additional time needed than to come out stronger and almost encouraging the person to believe they have multiple delays or extensions potentially available to them. Existing language seems fine.
Everyone wants to try to get them back in their home if they're trying to do something. So those situations, neighbors aren't complaining about those. It's when nothing happens, particularly if they haven't cleaned up the lot. And it's kind of a unsafe play area or, it's hard to mow it and keep it up when it's not been taken care of. So, and it's rare.
Yeah, I just don't want that to be read as we're under the gun. They've got enough stress, their house burned down. And they're like, oh, we're coming up. We can only get another 6-month extension. I mean, it could even read something as extended as long as the building permit is valid. So a building permit is 6-month abandonment. Well, actually now it's just a set date. There's no abandonment on it.
No, that part hasn't been the problem at all. The problem is not doing anything.
But that was my concern with that one.
I don't want to keep pulling things together if there are more points to be made. Otherwise, I'd like to pull together maybe a modification of the motion. Yeah? Okay. It's easy for me in hearing our conversation, to know the purpose in sending 2.29 back to Planning Commission. 3.4 is a little less clear to me. Are we saying to them, there should be a specificity, I think. Are we saying we don't like 40 acres and therefore we think you ought to change, or just, hey, think about it again? The other one is we agree with the spirit of what you're doing. The language still comes across somewhat ambiguous. Can you try to tighten the language up? And you probably wish we were telling you how to do it. We don't tell you the language, But this first one, 3.4, I'm not quite sure what we're saying. How would you want that?
I would have them review the total acre size, because I think there is, if they were to pull it, I've been kind of looking around there's many 20 acre to 40 acres that, there's going to be kayaks, there's going to be all these different things. So I just want them to look at maybe perhaps down to 20. I hate setting an actual number, but I would like them to review looking at some of these much smaller ones, the ones across from the new Cedar Lake area. I think these are deemed like 20.
With the understanding that they could very well come back and say, no, we kept it at 40. We talked about it more. We thought, with the smaller lakes, I think the neighbors, it would create issues, yada, yada. They may very well say, no, we still think this is best.
Sure. Want them to look at it again.
Is that how you guys want to put it? Yeah, would you review further 3.4 and just, in particular, that point P, the one you talked about, you said, Gary, from
I'm only looking at P personally, yeah.
I'm trying to put words. Anybody? Comments? Thoughts?
John lives on the lake. How big is the lake behind you?
Ours is 5 acres. I think it just meets the definition of a lake.
A plake?
A plake, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then, is there a motion to amend the motion that's before you?
And I wouldn't mind seeing more clarity on E, is they're redefining it as to the floor area shall include any that has a roof supported by columns. I'd just like more clarification on that one.
Okay. All right. All right. And Gary, you're obviously here and you've heard the point of that discussion that Michael's bringing up now, and you can convey that.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to what the definition of building code in chapter 2 is. I don't have that in front of me, but.
Okay.
But we can talk about that.
Okay. All right, well, you've got a motion before you. Sounds like it should be amended. I can take the attempt at that if you'd like. Hearing none. Okay, so I'm going to move to amend the motion that's currently before the board. And that would be to approve the ordinance changes that have been presented to us by the Planning Commission, with the exception of sections 3.4 and 2.29. And that as to those particular sections, that they be returned to the Planning Commission for further consideration in the case of section 2.29 for clarification of the language, and as to 3.4 for further thought and consideration in particular of points E and P. This is how I put it.
A second.
All right, moved and seconded. Discussion about the motion now is before you as amended.
My only question is procedurally, I'm very comfortable with that and I appreciate it too. My only question is procedurally, since it's a roll call, do we have to roll call on the amended and then roll call on the original?
Okay, I guess not. So, with that, all in favor of the amendment to the existing motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, now it'd be a roll call vote on the amended motions that now stands before the board. I'll look to our clerk.
Mrs. Monti?
Yes.
So it'd be accepting
Oh,
it.
it's hard to know. Yeah.
So it's accepting it.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Set for 3.4, 2.29 to be sent back.
Approved.
Okay. Mr. Veltman?
Yeah.
Treasurer?
No.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes. Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Thank you. Good discussion, board. And Gary, let the Planning Commission know we appreciate their efforts in looking at these.
Will you guys forward on that motion to Sammy and Victor,
We'll
whoever
put it on the agenda.
together? Okay, good, thanks.
All right, item number 10 on your agenda tonight, their motion to utilize a portion of the ARPA funds for this particular purpose as described, their various upgrades to our sewer system and the like, lift stations, et cetera. Motion.
So moved.
All right, moved and supported. Discussion about that. This is, I think we all know this is roughly, I think exactly $5 million in funds that would be allocated to the township under the ARPA funds, and have certain areas that they may be used for, albeit there's not really clear clarification on that yet. And I was the other day talking to some leaders while I was speaking to somebody on Congressman Heisen's staff, and he was saying a lot of cities and townships are sort of sitting on the money and waiting for further clarification, because I think a lot of them would like to use it in ways that right now they question whether it's permissible, right? And so this is something that, as I understand it, we're going to do regardless, and we have the money budgeted for regardless. And so the idea would be to split off roughly $900,000 of that $5 million toward an improvement we're going to need to make anyway. Sir, any thoughts about that? Comments?
It sounds like a safe way to approach it.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's something that's approved underneath the usage, and we were already doing it. So it was just a discussion of whether we wanted to allocate that as part of it.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's a great plan. You're pulling it from one wallet instead of another, right? Essentially.
Others?
I was going to say, I think we had the discussion in finance about, you had the same concern as I did, and I remember when it first came up, I said at the meeting is what strings are attached, because that's always how it works. They dangle that carrot and there's strings. And I think that was, one of the concerns. By accepting that money, what are we getting ourselves into? I think the good news is we've got the money we could allocate towards it anyway. So my only fear would be entering into an agreement by spending that money that we're making a deal. And we're going to regret it, but.
I shared that same concern in finance.
Yeah.
I do share that concern. I brought that up also with someone from Congressman Heisinger's staff the other night. Again, who knows, right? They're not the ones writing the regulation and all the rest, but the perspective was they don't expect that is going to turn out any differently than other types of programs for which monies have been accepted. And yes, there have been strings attached and other circumstances that have come back, I think, to bite, whether it be municipalities or others. But they didn't have a heightened concern about this, maybe in part because they feel like the government doesn't have the ability to track down to that level. In terms of if they had, potentially thousands upon thousands of municipalities, turning on them for attempting to backdoor some sort of requirement for how you took that funds in 2021, and therefore you will adhere to this particular executive order here in 2022. I think the feeling was there'd be enough of an uproar that the interpretation as such would be hard to enforce. But, Michael, I share your concern. Anything's possible.
And I think one of the differences when discussing with Dan was the fact that ours is different than a lot of municipalities here in Michigan. A lot of it went through the state for them. We went directly from federal, correct? Mm-hmm. So we were one of 10
Townships.
10 townships that actually got it directly federal.
Something like that.
So we eliminated a potential middleman in that. Mm-hmm. That potential additional stipulations could be added to the state level.
Good.
Well, the nice thing is if they want to repo it, it's in a poop station, so.
Poop lifters.
That's the way I look. I mean, if they take park equipment like slides and stuff, but this here, you want it, come get it.
We're not going to let them take sexy fire trucks or something. We're going to make them take our lift station.
I'm going to bring my camera. I'm going to tell you that right now.
And, one difference also is we have the fund for it. That if we ever did need to claw it back to pay it, if we decided we wanted to pay it back, we have the funds there.
Right.
All right.
Right.
It's already there.
Right.
Yeah, and talking with Bill Heisinger's district director this morning, he didn't seem concerned. He was like, they got bigger fish to fry. But then again, we're a fiscally conservative Christian community, so they might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows?
We saw that with the county and state level as well, so they like their targets.
Well, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, it's passed. Item 10A, holiday lighting. Holiday lighting. You saw that there was a motion as part of 8-4 to approve the low bid from Shine of Ottawa County for installation of holiday lights. Is there anyone wishing to put that before the board now by formal motion?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Moved. Support. Okay. All right. Discussion. Start.
Yeah, I can kick it off. So I'd like to explore with the board a little bit further on keeping this activity in-house and how we could go about doing that. Of course, I see where we've bid out, and I don't exactly see how many hours it would take, but maybe we can ask or get sort of an estimate of how many hours it would take and look at possibly bringing this into our service teammates to do, being that this is more of an off-season time for them. We've opened up a lot with moving the cemetery, bidding of those slots out. It frees up a little bit more time in exploring, can we keep this cost in-house or this activity in-house?
Okay. Other comments?
It is my favorite thing about Georgetown in the winter is the lights down there by the waterfall and down that stretch of Chicago Drive. And I think that part of why it catches my eye and takes my breath away is because it is just done so beautifully, and so professionally. And so as much as I love the idea of financial savings. I think that this is something that you trust the experts with and know that it's gonna end up beautiful and take our breath away and not be something that might not necessarily be in somebody's wheelhouse, that is supporting our township in some other way.
And we try to have them, they're going to try to do parts of our wall here and parts of our other properties as well, with their time as far as our staff. We have 3 people that run the cemetery and the parks, and we're short-staffed already, so I'm afraid that the timing to get it done may be a problem for the weeks you want to have it done. This, you want it done a very specific week, and it has to come down a very specific week, so it's just going to be harder for us to do that and do the other properties at the same time. That's going to be our challenge to do it in-house. It doesn't mean we can't, but we'd have to have them drop other things, and I know this. We need the support to have it done, and as Becky said, they've got the experience to do it. So,
do we know how many guys they would have hired for each of these situations? Is it 3, 4? Do they have a whole team of 10? I don't see any how many individuals or teams in the bid or hours that are spent doing it.
We don't know. We had 2 different contractors kind of bid the work this year, and this was the low bidder of the 2. And so,
could we go back and ask them how they bid out? What's the equation that they take into account?
I'm not sure. I guess you could guess it based on the formula, what they're charging in the future year for taking down and putting up the lights. They're thinking it's going to cost about $8,500 for taking them down and storing them is what they think their labor cost is of the component. The difference between the first and second year would be labor.
Because I just don't have enough information.
If you don't approve this today, we will not have lights. I'm just saying.
And that was what I was confronted with in finance. I mean, we were
kind of
up against it in that case, where we had 3 options, where it's either we have Shine do it and approve the lowest bid, which we thought it was the most effective between the 2, or we somehow train parks, 3 parks individuals to put them up, or we have nothing at all. So that was the dilemma that we were in, just because of when this came to us as far as timing.
I don't necessarily want to appeal to that last point that Dan made, though, and that you've echoed. That is, then we kick ourselves here. We should have been looking at this in September or August. And I think there's enough good reason to make your judgment about this apart from that, honestly, because the latter sounds like we blew it, which I don't really feel that way necessarily. But certainly now, from your point of view, which is a valid point of view, obviously, Kirsten, you're saying, well, now I really don't have the option of what I'm presenting if you're telling me it's too late to have lights, and of course I don't want to be the killjoy on lights. I don't think any of us should have been put in that position, but I would say it seemed to me, independent of that there was enough support on the board that even they said, you can go any of these directions and there's still plenty of time. I think there's probably a majority point of view that will emerge anyway. Make sense?
What week do they need to start working on it?
We want them up before Thanksgiving, so, you're 4 weeks away, right? We want them in. So they can only be up 6 weeks, and so kind of is a tight time window.
Is this something that, do we have to bid out all, how many years do we have here? All 5 years? That's part of it? Part of that low cost?
For future years? Are we obligated for the future years? Rod drew up the bid, so. Okay, so this would obligate us for the next 5 years for those sets of lights.
When you said 6 weeks, is that the maximum we can keep them up 6 weeks?
Yes. Our permit's good for only 6 weeks in the right of way.
That was going to be my question is, how about if we just leave the lights up? How many communities do that? I've seen it before.
A couple of neighbors that do.
6 weeks. You get 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Whether they notice it or not, I don't know.
But that only applies to the median.
Yes, only Chicago Drive in the median. Nothing on our property is not affected. So the
Veterans Plaza.
yeah, the fountain, those are not be affected. So
I've heard many positive comments about the lights. People think they're beautiful. Also, most people think we have 10, 20, 30 different people that work for us. And when they find out there's 3 and what their responsibilities are, they're dumbfounded. What I'm amazed at is throughout the years, we've privatized just about everything. And I think that's awesome. We are saving a fortune. We don't have to worry about the legacies that go with most employees. And I think this is the way to go. I think it's the way for us to go in the future. I think it's good to question. But we've got 3 employees, and they work really, really hard. And right now the market is tight. And I'm all for this. I think it's the way we should go.
Anyone else?
Can we at least call them Christmas lights instead of holiday lights?
Thank you.
sure.
Hallelujah.
That's from my perspective. It's not about no lights or lights. It's exploring what it looks like to bring in cost in.
Right.
And I don't know if I didn't hear any of the discussion, so I'll apologize, but I would be curious to know if we explored, a lot can be done with 3 people if you give them enough time and hours and allotment and baking that sort of behavior and activity in. But it just sounds like at this point, timing is not in that favor in particular, but.
You know, they run the cemetery, and so we don't control what's going to happen there. You know, we could have 2 or 3 burials during this time, and of course everything else just stops. You know, so, you know, for every week, I don't know what we're at. Was it 3 per week right now? Yeah. You know, so those things are picking up. So he's saying it's up to 5 now per week. So that's a lot of time, you know, where they're operating the cemetery. So it's hard for them to drop everything when, you know.
In a normal year, I'd probably also agree with going in-house, but being this late in the year,
Right.
I'm not even sure we could get the lights. That'd be my concern because
Exactly.
Think about it, we have companies that do office and library, clock tower, and freeway. So if our 2 guys did all that, that was right. I bring in a crew in and take them 4 or 5 days. So if their crew's more than 3, so if you figure in a week for each one, you're talking a month straight, 4 different properties. Nothing would be getting done.
And I think they're bringing in a crew for multiple days, and those people, like, for a job, do this kind of thing. Versus taking somebody who this isn't their job. Maybe they've never even hung Christmas lights on their house. We don't know. And then repurposing them, I think that you kind of get what you pay for, right? And I think that if we want a really professional look, then you let the professionals do it. But
let the record reflect that Becky thinks that our 3 workers are akin to Clark Griswold, I think.
I have no skills when it comes to hanging Christmas lights, and nor does my husband. And so our house goes without Christmas lights because I don't want them to look trashy until such a time that it can fit in our budget to have it professionally done, because I want them to look good and, you know, be beautiful like these other areas in town. So
I guess the point I'm trying to bring home here is, sounds good. I think timing is not in our favor this year to explore a more cost-effective way. It sounds like we haven't even asked if the 3 guys love hanging Christmas lights or not. So
we are making them hang in other places.
Okay.
So they
do a beautiful job. They're great guys. I met them on Friday.
So.
I was going to say, like, again, the timing thing is always, and from the fiscal responsibility, I completely understand that side. I do know personally, because I spend about 25 to 30 hours to do my lights, there is an art to it. You can't just throw it up. You have to do it. It takes a little bit longer to hang them substantially than take them down. Yeah, I think we're kind of up against it on this at this point, and I do want it to look nice at this point. That's my big thing.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a roll call vote and start on this end and protect your ability to vote no, because you have a point to make, and if you want to do so, it's certainly not an offense to the rest of us.
Right.
Even if it doesn't change the outcome this time around, it's duly noted, you know?
I just don't like the idea about locking into a 5-year contract. That's my issue, and they kind of have it broken down each individual year with the blanks next to it.
Would you be more comfortable if it was a 1 to 2 or 3 year contract?
I was going to say, I wouldn't mind exploring it. I have hung Christmas lights. I don't like ladders. But I've also watched a guy a block over hang string lights around a 30-foot pine tree. And he banged it out in no time. It looked fantastic. So it's nothing against Christmas light hanging companies. But it's not exactly rocket science.
Isn't part of the 5 years have to do with the lights, though? Aren't we?
Yeah, it's the life of the lights.
We're purchasing the lights and having those specific strings of lights hung for 5 years, and so that was my understanding of the point of a 5-year.
We take the hit on the first year to cover the lights, but then it's labor, as Dan said, in following years.
I think we're headed for hyperinflation. I hope not. But I think later we're going to look at this and go, boy, that was cheap having those guys put that up, because
Good point.
I think wages are going to go crazy
Good
here
point.
shortly.
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
We're the ones, they're locking in for 5 years. Okay, good luck.
Can't get anything else locking for.
I'm going to call for the vote.
And it's a tough one, too, because it's the end of October and we're just discussing this now.
Let's make it a roll call vote.
Surprise.
Yep. Mr. Schwam?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Supervisor?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
No.
Mr. Velding?
Yeah.
Monti?
Based on the facts that we talked about today, I'd say we have to go forward. So yes.
Okay. And that passes. Item 11, second public comment period. Opportunity for anyone to step forward and address the board on any subject. If you wish to do so? No? All right. Seeing none, we'll close the second public comment period. Item number 12, discussion, general information among the board. Anybody wish to share with the board any item of discussion or information? I have one.
I just want to let you know that if you hang the Christmas like crappy, your wife takes your tree down a whole lot quicker, too.
I just want them on my roof line in a straight line and not like.
I did attend both afternoon and evening on the redistricting this past Friday, and interestingly enough, not one person who spoke as to Ottawa County and the congressional redistricting in particular was in favor of Ottawa County being split.
Yeah.
Not one. Not one. Now, on that submission, not one of them is from our geographic area. And you could tell because they called it, they didn't know what Wealthy Street was, like financially, like money, wealthy? Yeah, Wealthy Street. Or another one they called Kentwood, Kent. Remember that?
Kentfoot or something.
Kentfoot, yeah, no, Rockfoot was one. I said Rockford, Rockfoot.
Really?
So I mean, to their defense, I mean, they're well-meaning, good intention, good faith people, but they don't know this area. And so I believe that the comments. This is one instance where you're not just talking at the wall. I think they were listening and going, okay, we don't know your area, and why do you feel this way? So that doesn't mean that the congressional district won't be redrawn, that it won't go all the way to the border along the lake down in Indiana is one of the possibilities. But I think it seems highly improbable, even though all but one of the maps did so already, which was to divide Ottawa County, Georgetown go one way and others go another. I don't think that's likely to occur if they were listening at all, because that's a lot of people to have no one on the other side of it. So I thought that was interesting. We'll see how they come down. And I don't know if I was here since the meeting we had with the chamber. Rod was there, but I don't know if it's been since the last meeting, but that was kind of fun. The people seemed interested at the chamber. We kind of gave a state of the township reporter, I did, and then Steve Moss spoke for Granville, and they're really interested. I thought they were good questions. People came up to me afterward. There's positive buzz, just in terms of, I like the vibe. I like the appeal over in Georgetown. I like what's happening over there. So, that feels good. So, anyway, I passed that along.
See, I had a question. At the last meeting, we approved Halloween for Saturday night or whatever. We didn't approve a time though, did we? Oh, I remember us voting on it. Like, man, I heard so many people like, who picked 6 to 8? I'm like, I don't remember we approved that. I remember we picked the day, but
It's been the same.
It was the first
We've had the
meeting,
same thing for 35 years.
yeah.
The exact same thing.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I got a few more than one person asking about. I'm like, you know what? You guys, we can't win.
People call and ask, what time does it start? Now you can say whenever you want, or you can say, we recommend 6 to 8, and they go, okay.
Okay. I'm just curious because it was like, that did get brought up a couple times. Like, why do you, 6? My kid's in bed by 6:30. What are you doing? I'm like, what do you want? I don't care.
We don't, yeah, we're not out there. We're answering someone's question when they call.
I just tell them to call you.
They will. I will tell you.
Don't do that.
They're very happy with the choice that you made. Whatever you're hearing, the people who are calling are very happy with the response.
Good.
And it seems like most neighboring communities kind of followed suit or were thinking along the same lines. And
I think the only one I saw on Sunday was Wyoming.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good.
With that,
I was saying, can we get an update on roads?
You mean what the status is for paving?
Yeah.
I haven't heard
How
the
we're
latest
looking.
one. With this weather, they're delayed.
Oh, all of them? Nice. What are we at now? Like 50% of both lists? Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And they usually go till what, November, second week in November?
November 14.
November 14 is when Riley shuts down.
Yeah, why did we get so late? Why is our township so late? What happened there?
There's a suggestion. It was some indecision on our part, and we got our stuff in later than normal. But it's only a suggestion. We don't really know.
That's not true. Okay, we had a good list in early.
So
Didn't we start bringing up roads in November last year?
we did bring up the roads for approval in November, but we just did not turn them in, and then we added to them, and so that changed our list a little bit.
So is that on the next utilities?
Yes.
Yes, they're supposed to get it to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
we'll do better next year.
Better.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Support. All in favor, say aye.
okay.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.
Beat my wife home.